All right. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us to talk about the correlation documents for 2020. My name is Amy Williams. I'm the Director of Review and Adoption here, and I want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. We're going to go over first the logistics, how to answer questions, or ask questions rather, talk about the deadlines related to correlations. I'm going to show you a few examples of what to do and what not to do. And then I'm going to open it up to you to ask questions. So now we're going to do a quick poll. I want you to respond whether or not you've actually watched the correlation training yet that we've posted to the website. So let's see here. It looks like it's a little more than half of you have not yet watched the correlation training. So that's something I'm definitely going to encourage all of you to do. We go step by step through the steps you need to follow to correctly complete and submit your correlations. So that training is posted to the publisher portal. Their preliminary correlations or your practice correlations are due on Friday, February 22nd, which is next Friday by 5 p.m. And all we're looking for there is 1 to 2 pages of citations for one product that you're submitting so that we can just get an idea of the strategy you're going to use when you submit correlations. So the correlations themselves don't have to even be the actual correlations you plan to provide. We just want to see how you're going to cite your content, and then we're going to give you feedback, thumbs up or thumbs down on what those correlations look like, how those correlations look. Your final correlations are due Friday, April 5th by 5 p.m. So you'll have just a little over a month after we review your preliminary correlations and give you feedback to finalize all of your correlations and get them into us. Now we're going to do one more poll question. How close are you to finishing your correlations? Okay, so it looks like most of you have started to some degree, and you're at various stages of completion, and we have a few of you who are actually already done with your correlations, so that is fantastic. Hopefully you don't hear anything completely new during this webinar and have to go back and make any changes. So let's just dive into some tips for success, and we're going to start with things not to do. So the most important thing is that you don't provide incomplete citations. So I've snipped a couple of examples here of an incomplete citation. You can see that in this first example, the publisher did not make a selection in the drop-down menu to designate whether the citation was a narrative or an activity. And they also did not include an ISBN for the component or the page number. Now, I do see that the page number was included in the specific location column, but we would expect that to appear just left of that column in the page number, and then the specific location could say Actividad 1.20. In this second example, you'll see that we're missing the ISBN and the page number again. We also ask that you don't provide multiple citations on one row or cite the entire product or a huge chunk of the product. So you can see here in this first example, this publisher has listed several different page numbers in the page number column, and also said found throughout. So what we're looking for really is that the panel can go to one particular location for each citation and put their finger on the content that you're citing. So sending them to a bunch of different pages on one citation is not what we're looking for. And then here you can see an example too that the publisher referenced 13 chapters. So we wouldn't expect that the reviewers are going to have to read 13 chapters of your material to get to that one narrative citation. Surely there's a way to narrow in on exactly where that content is located. Now, to give you some tips for what to do, we want you to definitely include a specific page number and location. Let me go back and so you can see those. So you see that in the first example, we have 2 narrative citations, both on page 14. One is in the section titled Other Careers in the Automotive Industry, and the second is in the FAQs, What is an Entrepreneur? Then in the second example, we have very specific lesson 1.1 problem 2 questions 1 through 5. So the reviewers are going to know exactly where to go, and it's on page 1.8. We also want you to provide multiple citations for each breakout if you can. So you can see here that we've got 2 narrative citations in the first example and 2 activity citations. So that gives you some wiggle room if the reviewers decide that they don't accept your first narrative citation, they have another option to review, or the same to be said for the activities. Also, example number 2 provided 2 narratives and 1 activity, and that's okay too. You might not have multiple citations for every breakout, but where you do have, we encourage you to include multiple citations. And as I promised, this is going to be really brief. My portion, I'm just going to go over some common questions that we've received and then turn the floor over to you all to ask your questions. First question we get is, why are some of the Elps grayed out? And the answer to that is that even though the teachers are required to incorporate all of the Elps in their instruction, some of the Elps are not required to be included in instructional materials. And there are some others that are only required in the teacher materials. So we've grayed out the Elps that are not required in instructional materials. That doesn't mean you can't include content that addresses those Elps in your instructional materials. You just won't have the opportunity to cite those. Next, we frequently receive questions about how many citations are you required to include for each breakout, and so I showed that on our tips for success. In order for a student expectation to be addressed, each breakout must include at least 1 acceptable narrative citation and 1 acceptable activity citation. So if you don't include both a narrative and a citation for a breakout of an SE, automatically we know that that SE is not going to be considered addressed, and it won't count towards your Teks coverage percentage. But we encourage you to provide multiple citations for each breakout. Next, we've heard the question, may we provide a justification or rationale for citations? And the answer to that is no. You have to provide an ISBN, a page number, and a specific location for the cited content. And in addition, if your materials are digital, you need to hyperlink your cited content on your evaluation instrument, but don't include any additional information such as a justification. We provide the reviewers with very specific instructions about when to accept a citation. And basically for those narratives, we're looking for an opportunity for the teacher to teach the expectation or the knowledge or skill, and we're looking for an opportunity for the student to learn the knowledge or skill. For the activity, we're looking for an opportunity for the student to demonstrate the knowledge or practice the skill. So if they can answer yes to that question, they accept your citation. So it's not necessary and not allowed for you to include justifications or rationales. We've also been asked who will have access to the correlations you provide. Primarily, your liaison is going to have access to those correlations because she's going to use those to convert them into an evaluation instrument. Then we're going to turn that evaluation instrument over to the state review panel, so they will have access. Those are the people that we definitely know are going to see your correlations, but the correlations, like anything else you send us, are subject to public information requests, and we do typically receive public information requests from individuals who want to see all of the correlations. All right, and then question 5, are we required to include every component we listed on our complete description on our correlation document? And I would say the answer says here yes, but it's not as direct as that. Since you should have only included components required for Teks and Elps alignment on your complete description, we would expect to see each of those components on your correlation document. You can't cite a component that you didn't include on your complete description. So every single ISBN that you list on your correlation document has to be listed on your complete description as a component. You will have a chance to add all of those other components that you wish to add and make available for purchase when you submit your official bids after the summer review. So the purpose of the complete description is to help us plan for the review. So we're really only expecting to see components that need to be reviewed. And I hope that that clears that up. Another question is, who will determine Teks coverage, and how does TEA determine who will be in that group? And so the state review panels, or we refer to them as SRPs, are responsible for reviewing the citations you provide and accepting or rejecting those citations. Those individuals have applied or have been nominated to serve on the panel. After approval by the commissioner and the SBOE member in whose district the applicant resides, then we select individuals with content expertise and experience to serve on the panel. Additionally, it's good to know that we assemble those panels to the extent possible that reflect the diversity of the state. So we're keeping in mind gender, ethnicity, geographic region, etc. And we have to have a majority of members on each panel be considered academic experts. And another question, do we need to provide links to our content from the correlation document, or do we need to provide links within our platform? We get this question a lot, and this is the last one that I'm going to discuss before opening the floor up to you all. The answer is both. If you've submitted digital materials, you have to provide hyperlinks on your correlation document that direct users to the specific content you're citing. You must also integrate the correlations into your product, and that's what we mean by embedding correlations. You can do this by either inserting a PDF of your correlation document that has those hyperlinks into your platform, or you can create some type of correlation menu within your program. If you're wanting to see some examples of how publishers have done that, you can access the Proclamation 2019 pre-adoption samples from the Proclamation 2019 website. And from there, you'd be able to access the different publishers' materials, and those that are digital will have embedded correlations. All right, now it's your turn. What questions do you have? Don't be scared. Oh, okay, good. Mallory, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question about, if you have an activity, can you list the same, like several questions on the same page? So page 65, question 5, 7, and 9?
Absolutely. That means that the panel needs to find that questions 5, 7, and 9 all address the breakout. So you could either list those, as a group, because you need to answer all of those questions to get to the SE, or you can list 3 different activity citations with those 3 questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
that does. Thank you.
Good, you're welcome. All right, let's see. Sarah Nolan.
Hi, yeah, I have a question about the new structure of the Elps correlations. So, previously we had a tab for Elps student and a tab for Elps teacher on the correlations document. And so we listed, the requirements were the same. Obviously, you had to have at least one example for each breakout on each the student and the teacher. So with the Elps tabs being combined into one this year, do we still need to have one example under student teacher item type as well as one example under teacher only? Or is it one example total per breakout? I was a little fuzzy on that.
Sure, that's a great question. Because teacher material includes student material, for any of the Elps that are required in both the student and the teacher material, the citations can come from the student material and be sufficient. And it'll cover both the content being in the student material and the teacher material. Now, for those handful of Elps that are required only in the teacher material, those citations need to come really the same from the student or the teacher. So whereas the student/teacher has to come from the student material, the ones that are teacher can come from either the student or the teacher. And no, you don't have to provide examples from both. Does that answer your question?
It answers it partway.
Okay.
And this may be a silly question as a follow-up. How do I know which ones are teacher only required? Because like I said before, like different ones are out on the 2 different tabs, so that's how we knew. But I'm not seeing a breakout document now that shows whether they are, required for both student and teacher or required for only teacher.
Do you have the correlation document open?
I do, yeah.
Okay, and so I have to answer this question in 2 parts. First, the correlation document on the Elps tab should have a column where it's labeling which group is required and at what grade level. So it'll say, for example, S:612, T:12. So in that instance, it means student and teacher because we're only doing high school. So anything that says, well, and those couple middle school classes, but everything that says student and teacher is going to require it to be both in the student and teacher material, which means it could just be in the student material and be fine. Now, there are some that will just say T:12, and on the original correlation document that we sent you, that was not the case. We had made a mistake on that correlation document, so we sent out a clarification listing the specific expectations that are teacher only and offered an updated correlation document if you wanted one. So when we get those back, if you didn't request an updated document, we're going to update your correlation document to show which ones were only required for teacher material.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes. Thank you.
Great. All right, who else has a question? Let's see if anybody's typed a question in to the question box. Okay, we do have a question typed in. When will the breakout template be posted, not just the breakouts? How does that relate to the machine readable digital version of the Teks? So let me see who asked that question because I need a clarification. Was that William Bryant?
No, it was not.
It was not. Okay, let's see who else. Was it Renee? I don't think Renee has. Renee, did you ask that question? Okay.
Renee is here, yes.
So Renee, are you talking about the correlation document, the Excel correlation document that has the breakouts in it, or are you looking for just the breakouts?
No, not just the breakouts. We have those. Where is the actual correlation document with the drop-down menu? Did we miss it?
Yeah,
those
were sent as soon as you submitted the statement of intent to bid. So if you didn't receive those, then just reach out to your liaison and she will resend them.
Okay. And then what about these machine readable Teks?
Got it. I'm glad you asked that question because we are getting a lot of questions about the machine readable Teks. And the thing to consider is that the machine readable Teks requirement is really separate from your correlations and the requirement to embed correlations in your product. So the requirement for machine readable Teks is that anytime that you tag content within your platform, if you have a digital platform, you're required to tag it using the unique identifiers provided on the machine readable Teks website. So if you haven't already done so, you need to go to the Texas Gateway and create an account on the machine readable Teks page, and you can access all of the technical documents as well as what you need to actually download into your platform. So you may choose to tag the content that you cited on your correlation documents, although you're not required to do that specifically. Just that anytime you would tag your content, you need to do it with the machine readable Teks. And that's not something that users are going to be able to see. It's something that happens in the background. Does that answer your question, Renee?
I believe so.
We're happy to set up a call with tech folks if any of you out there want to have a lengthier conversation about machine readable Teks. All right, let's see what else we have. Where can I find examples of approved citations for both Teks and Elps? That question came from William Bryant. It depends. William, I'm going to unmute you so that we can talk about that. Are you asking for approved citations for grades 9-12?
Yes.
Okay. So the only thing that we would have are the citations that were approved in the previous proclamation. So that would be Proclamation 2010 or 2011. They wouldn't be citations for the current version of the Teks. So we could kind of come at that different ways. You could request some examples of the completed evaluation instruments from one or more courses. You could also request the same for the K-8 courses that were reviewed last summer. And I'm not sure which or if either of those will be helpful. Also, when you get into the 2019 samples of the folks who have embedded correlations, you can see what the publishers cited if you're just looking for examples of cited content.
Yeah, I think that would do it for me.
Okay, good. All right, and then let's see. We have another question from Carol. It says, in the template, rows 8 through 9 ask for identical content, program title, and ISBN. Please confirm this is to provide a different title and different ISBN of a program with identical content. Carol, what we're looking for here is an instance where you basically are submitting a print version and a digital version, and both versions have identical content. So in that instance, we know that even though you've submitted 2 statements of intent to bid, we only are going to need to review one of those products because the content is identical. And Carol, I've unmuted you. Does that answer your question?
It certainly does. Thank you.
Great. All right, and let's see. Gail also wants to know if there'll be more information about the machine readable Teks coming. Gail, let me find you here on my list so I can unmute you. There is already the information available about machine readable Teks, and so based on your question, I suspect perhaps you haven't yet visited the Texas Gateway. So if you need more information about that, then just reach out to your liaison and she can provide you with a link.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I actually have reached out to my liaison, and I have gone on to that site. We're just a little bit over here. We're just a little bit confused as to what exactly needs to be on there. We use Certica for our standards, so not terribly sure if Teks needs to be used instead of the Certica standards. Not sure what needs to read it, if it's a screen reader. So there are just a couple of technical questions that we had over on this side.
Okay, I suggest that we set up a conference call so that we can talk about that particular situation. But we are expecting that the machine readable Teks, so definitely alignment to the Teks, and that content that aligns to the Teks is tagged with that unique ID.
Okay, that call would be great.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, now we have a question from Thomas Brown, and it says, if an Elps is required for both student, teacher, and teacher, we only need one hit in the teacher rows if the student material comes with the teacher material. So not quite. What I'm saying is that teacher material includes the student material. So a teacher who is using your material would use the student material to plan and deliver instruction. So the teacher has access to the student material. It doesn't work in reverse. So the student doesn't have access to the teacher material. So if an Elps is required in both the student, which would be a row titled student/teacher, and the teacher, which would just say teacher, then the content can come from the student material. If it's teacher only, then the material can come from either the student or the teacher. So let me find you, Thomas, and unmute you so that you can elaborate if that does not answer your question.
I think that answers the question. I'm just a little thrown by the combination of the two, the SE Elps tab and the TE Elps tab.
I'm sorry. We were trying to make it easier for everybody so that you didn't have to do multiple citations, especially for those that are required in both student and teacher, since technically your student citations would count towards a teacher citation. So I apologize to throw that that new strategy at you.
Okay. So if it has S6 through 12 as a requirement, a specific Elp, then we should be listing student-facing content in
Correct.
In that first section, and teacher-facing content, and only teacher-facing content in the second section. And the idea is that the teachers will still have access to the student content in that first section, but to meet the student requirement, it has to be in the student material.
I am going to see if I can pull up a correlation document so that we can, oops, wrong proclamation, so that we can look at that together. Move it over here. Okay, so you can see that we have the one Elps tab, and 1A1 says here that it's required for the teacher and the student. So in order to get credit for this one breakout, you could just provide a student citation, and it will count towards both the student here and the teacher. So it wouldn't be necessary to provide a teacher-only citation, because if the student citations are accepted, then you've covered it in both the student and teacher material, since the teachers use the student material. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, good.
So it doesn't work the other way.
It doesn't work the other way. And I don't know that, oh yeah, so here is an example. 2D1 is only teacher. So in that one, you could put your citation in the teacher only. And we wouldn't expect to see anything here. And if you chose to put it on this row, we're going to work with you and match up the ISBN. But just know that if it says teacher, it can come from the student material or the teacher material. If it says students, then it can't come from just the teacher material.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so hopefully, Rebecca, this answered your question. To follow up for the teacher-only rows, oh, you said yes. If the citation is just in the teacher materials, do we need to use the first row even though it's labeled student material? So if it's teacher-only, I'm just going to make a decision kind of on the fly here. If it's only in the teacher material, why don't you go ahead and put it in the peach rows, teacher only, just for consistency. And then if it's from the student material, you can put it in the white rows. So let's follow that. What other questions do you all have? These are great questions. Let's see. Sarah, I'm going to unmute you. You have your hand raised. Sarah B.
Balistrary. Is that who you're looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. I think you've answered this, but I just want to make sure that we're totally clear. It sounds like any Teks tags that we add to our digital product should use the machine readable Teks, and therefore they should also be to the student expectation level, not to the breakout level, because we noticed the machine readable Teks go to the SE level.
That is an excellent question, Sarah, and the answer is yes. The machine readable Teks only go to the student expectation level, so the content that you tag using those unique identifiers would be to the student expectation level. Your embedded correlations have to be to the breakout level.
Got it, but the embedded correlations requirement can be met by including, for example, a PDF of the correlation spreadsheet.
A PDF of the correlation spreadsheet that has hyperlinks to the content.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, keep them coming. Let's see if anybody has any more questions. You can either raise your hand or you can type your question into the questions pane on the control panel. Okay, well, it looks like we have exhausted all of the questions. Hopefully you got the answers that you needed. If you have any additional questions or you want to follow up about something that we discussed, please reach out to your liaison. And as I mentioned, we're happy to set up conference calls with you and other members of your team who might need clarification on these topics. We will look closely at the preliminary correlations that you send in by next Friday and provide you with some feedback just to improve your correlations. And with that, I will just say thank you for spending this time with us, and we enjoy working with you.